You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast, and on this episode, we're getting strange with the Stranger Friends as we talk about Halloween 2023 and the movies. Hashtag Stranger Friends will be watching this spooky season. Here we go. You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Bernie Gonzalez. With me today, fellow co-host Pete Charbonneau, and we have a panel of guests. What was it? Hollywood Squares, Pete, where they had a bunch of amazing celebrities every week, a rotating cast of characters.
And me, I'm Shadow Stevens of the Center Square. Yeah.
This time,
Shadow Stevens and Jim J. Bullock like battling it out.
Jim J. Bullock. That's right. This time our celebrities are a little strange, stranger friends, you might say, because we have some Fan2Fan all-stars that are rejoining us. Brooke, John Zemsky, Alan, and Rebecca returning to talk about Stranger Friends, to talk about Halloween, to talk about all things scary. John, we have waxed poetic about our nostalgic love for horror movies. So some of the movies that will be part of the Stranger Friends schedule for October. Let's share a little bit with folks who may be listening. Give them a bit of a sense about Stranger Friends and some of these movies.
Stranger Friends started actually before me. It's Alan and Bex were watching some films with our friend Lanny and her sister Kat, kind of 80s themed films. Started during the beginning of the pandemic, I guess. And I was fortunate enough to kind of weasel my way into this group after watching Lanny's film on streaming called The Subject. And these guys have tolerated me ever since. But it basically was just born from bored people during the pandemic watching movies on Friday evenings, kind of like we used to do, where you'd get together in your basement with some friends and a couple of VHS tapes. But this is obviously the new generation, so it's streaming. And we used Twitter at the time to live tweet the movies, formed some pretty close friendships through that, which is quite astounding if you really think about it. But yeah, since then, we took a break for a little bit. People have kind of gotten back to things after the pandemic, and a bunch of us got together and talked about how it would be really cool to throw on some horror movies again, because that's definitely our sweet spot.
John's the one who actually named us the Stranger Friends. When he joined in, he said something about how nice it was to make all these stranger friends. And from there, when we had the name, we started to all get a little closer. There's a good group of us who have been around, and we've all gotten pretty comfortable and familiar with each other, but we're always looking for more people to join and enjoy it with us. People who love movies, whether you know them or you don't know them. I haven't seen a bunch of the ones that we have watched in the past or we're going to watch, and so it's fun to watch them for the first time with a group, and it's fun for a lot of the people who know them really well to watch them again and experience it with some stranger friends.
One of the fun things about it is like there's such a unique and everyone kind of brings their own personality. And we're always, like Beck said, we're always looking to bring some new people in. But I think, some people watch it just to watch the movie or to rewatch it. Some people like myself are just like furiously typing away like as many jokes as they can possibly get, to get some laughs out of people. Other people are dropping trivia and knowledge and maybe, an anecdote of, a time that they had seen the film, or maybe they met one of the actors or directors from it. So when you follow along the hashtag, you're really just kind of getting like this real wide variety of interaction with people. And I think that was one of the big appeals for me personally. John had told me about it back during the pandemic. At that point, like we were all just starved to do anything social, to kind of gravitate towards something where you had mostly like-minded people just wanting to find a space online where they felt some kind of connection was just a wonderful thing. And we've talked about this, before a few times, but for those of out there that are hearing this for the first time, I think it was really life-altering for many of us. Everyone that's on here right now, we've all become good friends through this. And, we put in, a decent amount of effort every week that we've done this, whether it's doing a graphic to kind of hype it up, to get the word out amongst other people. John has put together musical pieces for it. We're lending, Bernie, you've on an artwork for the latest iteration. Like we're all, putting our creative, efforts and minds into this because, I think it means a lot to all of us that, we create some kind of community and we have those, those fibers that are binding people from all across the country together. And, it's just, it's a fun time. It's a great way to just wind down the week and have some laughs. And we hope to have many more laughs during the month of October.
Pete, one thing too is interesting. Like, we've all talked about this before, just in our Stranger Friends group, the fact that we all bring the awkward in different ways. And we love to watch movies and we love, just different types of films. And 80s films brings a lot of the awkward, especially when you're looking at horror or just the schlock. There's always just some awkward plots, lines, acting, whatever it is. There's just a magical time for films. And I think just a way to bring people together to celebrate that. And then for people just to feel a little bit more comfortable. It's not so heady of a group.
All right, John. So you mentioned some of those 80s movies. Let's list out some of the movies that you guys have watched, some of the shared experiences that you guys have had.
Oh, my gosh. Well, as Beck said before, there's some films that I had never seen before, and there's some that I'd seen, a million times. So like your Ferris Bueller's, I got to see Girls Just Want to Have Fun for the first time. Believe it or not, this is kind of shameful to admit. I'd never seen the full Night of the Creeps before. I'd seen parts of it. Wasn't sure how good it was going to be. But then my buddies here were like, you have to see this movie. Watched it, and we had an absolute blast.
Anytime you can experience Tom Atkins is a good day. Absolutely.
Thrill me.
I got good news and bad news, girls. The good news is your dates are here.
What's the bad news?
They're dead.
And I think you guys have almost hit the entire John Hughes catalog, movies like I Can't Buy Me Love, those really good 80s staples that you may have seen, or in your case, but you said maybe some you haven't seen, but you've heard of.
Yeah, definitely a ton of the classics and the should-be classics. And yeah, even when you're going with the ones that everyone knows, if you're watching, Pretty in Pink or The Goonies, it's really fun to chat about it with everybody and see everyone's different views. And the trivia is always fun. There's always someone who has some kind of behind the scenes photo to add and little fun facts. And we try to pick things that are fun, things that have funny moments and things that we can laugh at. We've done a good amount of romance, but romantic comedy. In that realm, we ventured outside of the 80s a tiny bit, but that's definitely, the glue that's held this together.
Cocktail comes to mind.
That might be my all-time favorite.
There was no movie that we ripped to fucking shreds more than Cocktail, starring Tom Cruise and Brian Brown. A movie that literally looks like what Tom Cruise might have 4 different hairstyles going in it, and they can happen in the same frame because there were so many reshoots and rewrites, and Brian Brown throws himself down a flight of subway stairs that I'm pretty sure he actually fell down the stairs the more that I rewatch it. I don't think that was a stunt man there, just like he was drunk. One of our last live tweets together, we did Stand By Me, which I think drew one of our biggest crowds. Everyone came together, had different stories to tell about the first time they had seen this classic or what the movie meant to them. We've had intense debate in the group amongst some kind of wonderful and Pretty in Pink, and are you a Some Kind of Wonderful fan? Are you a Pretty in Pink fan? The founder, Lanny Ziploy, who created this group, her sister Kat Moore is just a huge Pretty in Pink fan, where I'm a huge Some Kind of Wonderful fan, and it's fine to like both, but I mean, that one is the version Hughes wanted, the one that I like. And one is the version that the studio made. We've had great nights doing as John suggested, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. I mean, that was a blast. We tore apart a Fred Savage, Judd Reinhold movie.
I don't remember watching 5 seconds of it. I literally was head down, typing joke after
Vice
joke.
versa.
We had a lot of bourbon that night.
A lot of Vice Versa one night.
That was one of those Freaky Friday type movies, wasn't it? Where they change bodies.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. He was great in Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2. We should let him have his own starring movie, and let's see what he does. And
that's right.
We saw what he does, what he did, do. Yeah, we had a lot of fun with it.
What was the one with that goofy rap "Take That" in it, where the guys are dancing? That
Teen Witch, that's another classic.
Teen Witch,
That was a big night. That was a big night, Teen Witch.
I had never seen that whole movie, but that scene in that film is one of the greatest all-time scenes ever made.
I remember Running Scared. Gregory Hines,
great movie,
and Billy Crystal,
in Chicago. Love that movie.
A movie that we had all forgotten about, and it's hilarious. It has this montage in Florida for like 7 minutes, where like they're just down in Florida, like banging chicks and getting drunk, and they decide to buy a fucking bar. And there's Sweet Frida played in the background from Michael McDonald, and you're just like, are we still watching an action movie set in Chicago, or did I take acid? So.
D, all the above, Alan. That's what it was.
One of the other things about these movies that's really important about what we do is that we try and make it not just fun for everybody, but pretty accessible. So we're always trying to make sure that these movies are available either on a free streaming service or one that's incredibly common for people. I don't know if we've ever had something that was like required renting more than maybe once or twice. And if so, it was like very seasonally timed because there wasn't much more of an option, or we knew that a lot of people mentioned that they owned it on DVD or something anyways.
So since you mentioned seasonally timed, let's get into some of the selections for Halloween. Alan, let's talk a little bit about Chopping Mall.
They broke into the mall for the wildest all-night party of their lives. Get that meat. But you're never alone. In the Chopping Mall.
What's that?
Robot blood. Chopping Mall, where shopping costs you an arm and a leg.
It's kind of nice that we're coming back in with some Halloween movies, some horror movies, some really shitty horror movies. We sort of started to get serious with Stranger Friends years ago with Night of the Comet. That was one of the first movies we did with like an expanded group. Stars one of our favorite gal pals on Twitter, whatever it's now known as X, Kelly Maroney. We're coming back in with Chopping Mall to start the doubleheader. And as a tribute to Kelly, we're hoping maybe she'll join us. She'll show up and hit the like button. If we're really lucky, maybe she'll drop us a tweet. She'll hashtag Stranger Friends. It's gonna be hashtag Stranger Friends every Friday night for probably roughly 3-4 hours.
Do you ever want to see a movie that's about killer robots and a commentary on capitalism?
I'm quite excited about it.
There you go.
I can't believe that this movie was originally called Killbots when you've got a name like Chopping Mall.
Absolute winner.
So Chopping Mall, I saw like a couple of years ago for the first time, and that was awesome. Really campy and ridiculous, and I like any horror movie that takes place inside of a mall because Dawn of the Dead is one of my favorite movies of all time.
So I had seen Night of the Comet with Kelly. Obviously, like that was like mandatory when we were younger, but for some reason, I don't know, this one just eluded me. Chopping Mall it's the most batshit 80s movie, of course, in a mall that you will ever see. It's just so much fun. Just freaking robots, getting out of control, which could really be like a PG type Spielberg movie. But this, of course, has, boobs and gore. So it's, full on like schlockfest.
The exploding heads. Yep.
Yeah, exploding heads.
It's also like directed by Jim Warnowski, and he's from John and Pete, your old neck of the woods, because he's a fellow Long Islander. He directed like 100 and some movies, like movies that, Corman produced. But the one thing I always remember about Jim Warnowski, or however you pronounce his last name, like he made a string of movies that were all like softcore porn. Cleavage Field, that was a ripoff Cloverfield, The Bear Wench Project, Paraknockers Activity. Like after making movies like Chopping Mall in the 80s, that's how he's kind of wrapped up his career, known for making all of these, kind of like softcore movies.
So, and that explains why John Terlesky is in it because John Terlesky, as we covered on a previous podcast, was Deathstalker 2.
That's right.
A Jim Wynorski treasure. You talk about chewing scenery. This guy literally chews the scenery in this movie because he's like chewing gum nonstop. It's great. He's got the 80s hair. So 80s hair. And then that's really, I think, why this one kicks it off is because it's just a fun one to do a live tweet to. And, you know, a lot of people know it, but not everyone does. So Chopping Mall kicks us off. And, you know, we got together. We had a Zoom call. And we invited on like some of our old regulars to kind of just hang out and just kind of reconnect a little bit. But we also kind of solicited recommendations for this because, you know, kind of like a fine pairing of like a Prosecco and a white chocolate. Like we wanted like these double features to, if not thematically go together, but like go together in some way. You know, it's encouraging people to stick around for the second one. But of course, you don't have to. A lot of times people will just watch the one and then they go to bed or they want to do something else. But some of my most enjoyable nights, having a movie that we were set to watch, movie ends, people maybe a little bit tipsy, you know, probably had a couple of whiskeys. A couple of us just didn't want the night to end. And then so someone would recommend or be like, hey, let's see what else is streaming. And then throw out like just a horrible movie. Like one night we watched The Last Shark, which has got to be one of the most hysterically bad movies. And, when you're talking about shark movies, there's a lot to choose from. But my God, like that one, like was up till like 1 or 2 in the morning, just kept going. So we love the idea of the double features. Throughout October, each Friday, we're going to do a double feature, and we encourage everyone to stick around for both. And hopefully people will do that and have fun. So yeah, we kick it off at Chopping Mall, and then we paired Chopping Mall with just an all-time classic, right up there with Halloween and The Exorcist. And of course, I'm talking about Troll 2, probably one of the worst movies ever put to film. So much so that it was the subject of its own documentary, Best Worst Movie, which I highly recommend. We're going to have a blast kicking it off with those two.
This October, as far as like quality, we love you, Kelly, obviously, but yeah, I mean, the idea is basically to have as much fun as possible with this lineup in October.
All right. So that's week 1.
Week 2, October 13th, Friday the 13th, you guys have a perfect movie to start off the double feature, and that is
Jason Takes Manhattan.
Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. New York has a new problem. Rated R.
And take it, he does. When you're talking about the Halloween season in October, you've got your heavy hitters of franchises of like Friday the 13th, Halloween. We wanted to represent that in some way. We've done, like, the final chapter was another great, live tweet that we did with, Crispin Glover doing the fucking dance. Just, it's
dead
just,
fuck.
Hey, Ted, where's the corkscrew, Ted? We've done that one. What else will be a great watch for the masses? And we landed on Takes Manhattan because it's so ridiculous. Like, so little of it actually takes place in Manhattan, as we will find out. But again, there's a fun factor there that we think people watching and tuning in will really love. And the back end of Jason Takes Manhattan has always been a guilty pleasure of mine. Back when I first rented it with my cousin Mark back in the late 80s. And we're talking none other than Tawny Katane from the Whitesnake videos and Pat Tremaine from Our Lives in Witchboard.
Witchboard was really big for me as a kid because my sister was obsessed with Days of Our Lives. And Steve, a.k.a. Patch from Days of Our Lives, is Tawny Katane's love interest or whatever. So, he's like the main character. So my sister was like really adamant that we watch this movie. We had to watch Witchboard. And I actually really like it. I mean, it's crazy and like just out there as it is. To me, it's like perfect. I always remember when she like loses her ring down the pipe and she freaks out and it's a big thing. And she's like asking the Ouija board, where's my ring? And it's just, I don't know. And then there's that crazy woman she's the medium with the short, toppy colored hair. And she's always like, TTFN, ta-ta for now. That always, like, whenever someone says that, which now my One of my doctors says that. I think it's the funniest thing on the planet. Like, I always think of that lady.
This is going to be another fun one.
I have to admit, I've never seen this movie at all.
Oh, boy.
And the only thing I know about this is I think it's Parker Brothers or Hasbro or one of those board game companies actually owns, I guess, the trademark to a Ouija board. So you can't say that. So I don't know if it started back in like the 80s, which is why this movie is called Witchboard. But I've never seen this. It felt like one of those movies that when I would go to the video store was always there. Like it was a staple of the horror aisle at the very end. But
always there by you mean like never rented?
I think so, yes.
99-cent section.
I think so, absolutely. But just never one that I got to. And yeah, I'm actually kind of excited to see this one.
How come there's not more horror movies off of Candyland? That game sucks. That really scares the shit out of me when my daughter used to take that out of the closet.
Or Hungry Hungry Hippos. That one, That would be a good one, John.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember, you can find the Fan2Fan podcast at www.fanpodcast.com. Facebook, just search Fan2Fan Podcast. That's FAN, the number 2, FAN. On Instagram at Fan2Fan Podcast. Or on Twitter at Fan2Fan Podcast. We'd love to hear from you, so send a message and let us know what you think of the show. Thanks.
And now, on with the show.
Speaking of Ouija boards, because I think when I was in college, I actually purchased one, and I believe it was Parker Brothers. And
oh God, keep that going way back.
John on the spot here because we've known each other since Little League when we were kids, and we were bored one night on Long Island. And remember, folks and kids, it's on Long Island, not in Long Island. I don't know. It was getting late, and we're like in the basement, and like let's fuck around with the Ouija board. And so we did. We had like the candle lit, and we were doing the thing, and
we had our clothes on. I know what you're thinking.
Yeah, fully clothed. We somehow contacted a vampire that lived on Tuxedo Lane. This is what came through on the Ouija board, and then we're laughing like, "Well, that's goofy. Who spells out Tuxedo Lane? That's not even real." And my dad, who was an electrician, used to have this like giant spiral bound map of Long Island because he would drive to different places to do work. So this is the days obviously before GPS and all that. He just had like this giant map, and I used to look at it all the time. I was fascinated by the thing. So I'm like, well, let's just look it up and see if there's a Tuxedo Drive in town. Never had heard of it before. Looked it up. Tuxedo Drive does in fact exist. And then John got a little bit spooked.
Beyond a little. I ran the fuck to my car.
Sure that he got to his car safely, and I was like standing there making sure that he was able to drive away safely without being attacked by some unseen force.
The real reason it took me so long to pull away was because I was changing my clothes. I mean, I was really, really scared. It was a very strange night.
Did you see Laszlo and Nandor over on Tuxedo Lane? Is that where you were at?
Fucking guy.
So the first and only time I have ever seen Witchboard on a television was at my cousin's house. I was over there one night for a sleepover with him and my my other two cousins, his brother and his sister, and my aunt had a friend over, and they heard we were watching Witchboard on the TV, so they broke out the Ouija board.
Every time we say Ouija board, Alan, we have to pay like 5 cents to Hasbro or Milton Bradley or something, just saying.
Yes, so Ouija. But so I, needless to say, did not sleep at my cousin's house that night after they tortured me and made me work, the Ouija board with them, conjured ghosts that they told me would be in my cousin's room with us. So very similar experience. I ran away crying, like ran all the way home.
That's how people will feel after watching the movie, I bet too.
There's a 57% chance that.
There we go. That's a good chance. All right, let's move on to October 20th. I love this one. This is like one of my favorite double features that you guys have here. Sleepaway Camp and Slumber Party. Oh, man, I love this one.
This is thanks to Brooke. So I think the types of horror movies that Brooke, brings to the table. We're really happy about that, by the way, Brooke. Thank you.
Slumber Party Massacre. We're talking about 2, correct? The second one? Or are we talking about 1? I've seen
2.
Both of them pretty recently. 2 is the one with the guy who's playing the guitar. I think I saw that like 2 years ago when I went on this like rampage of like getting all these crazy slasher films out of the way because I didn't used to like slasher films when I was younger. I grew to love them as I got a little bit older and got into my 30s and 40s. So, yeah, that one is really funny. I like the first one better as a movie, but the second one, I mean, you can't help but laugh at the craziness that goes on in that film.
Are there parts of that film on a boat or something? I remember that, like with the guitar and everything. Aren't they on a ship or something?
I don't think it's a
That's
boat.
Jason Takes Manhattan, John.
I think so. Yep.
They're in like a, Jason Takes Manhattan is definitely on a boat, but
Yep.
they're in like a construction zone at one point in Slumber Party Massacre.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Maybe it's like right by, that inlet that takes you from Camp Crystal Lake all the way from the lake to Manhattan.
Yes.
Maybe that's
That
where.
little known river that runs through New Jersey that goes right straight to Manhattan.
That's right. I'm sure it was in your dad's Atlas piece.
Yeah. In fact, you can take Tuxedo Drive. It kind of follows the river.
It's a frontage road, I believe. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's the one. I'm sure that I know I've seen parts, but I don't know if I've seen that one all the way through. So that's going to be like, essentially a first time watch for me. So I'm looking forward to that. Like you, Bernie, like Sleepaway Camp. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I don't know how you don't remember your first time seeing it after you watch it. But like I definitely remember that being like a very early days rental and seeing like the box cover art in the video store. And this is like before Blockbuster. So we're like talking, I forget when it came out, but this is early 80s. And it was like one of those, like we were with friends of the family. It was like my dad and he's not really my uncle, but we called him my Uncle Mike. And then, my brother, and they had a son that was my brother's age. They had like two daughters that were in between my age. And so like we all rent this movie thinking like, oh, this will be just like a fun slasher. And then you get to, again, no spoilers, but you get to that ending and just incredibly uncomfortable, like sitting there with your parents, like watching the movie. You're like 12 years old. I was like, okay, all right, well, what else we got? What else can we film after this?
Those would both be uncomfortable movies to watch with parents.
Yeah, Sleepaway Camp freaked me out so much. I think I like ran from your house and crap my pants in my car.
Every time that I visit John now, I show up with extra clothes just in case.
Even for comedies.
10 years ago, Halloween, evil had a shape. Terror had a night. And now he's back.
6 bodies, Sheriff, that's what I've seen. I tell you, Michael Myers is here in this town.
Halloween 4, the return of Michael Myers.
He's come home to kill.
Halloween 4, rated R. Starts
All right, so the last double feature for Stranger Friends Halloween 2023, October 27th, talking about slashers, Halloween 4 and Hell Night.
So Halloween 4, I know, is a big fan of like the Schlockfest fans of Halloween movies. And that's one I have not seen as much. Is that one, Bernie, where the mask goes like off, like out of whack or something? Or am I thinking of something different?
No, you're thinking of the right one. 4 and 5 are kind of known as having not necessarily the best masks, let alone the best Michaels, but those are, you're thinking about like the franchise that is Halloween. I think 4 and 5 is where it started to kind of go off the rails a little bit. And then bringing in his niece and then the psychic connection. If you thought like 2 kind of closed the loop on 1, and 3 was completely crazy bonkers with Stonehenge and Tom Atkins and Halloween masks, but it still kind of worked. 4 was like, so you guys want more Michael Myers? We're going to totally fuck this up as much as possible. And he did in both 4 and 5. And luckily, everyone will be watching it on October 27th. But yeah, you're thinking of the right one, John. It's the one where if you ever think of a bad mask, you're probably thinking of 4.
So this was our most requested movie by the Stranger Friends.
I will say, after saying it was a crappy movie, though, I am kind of impressed that people recommended it. A little bit of a curveball, maybe a lesser loved Halloween movie in the franchise.
And I think one of the good things about Halloween 4, while it's not a great movie, again, in keeping with our theme of what we're trying to do here, it's definitely highly entertaining from a group watch standpoint. And so I think this is another one we're going to have a lot of fun with. I remember being so excited when this came out in the theater because I'm like, oh, and I really enjoyed Halloween 3, but I'm like, this is great. They're bringing back Michael Myers. It's going to be awesome. and then you see it, and I think 4 is okay. 5 really goes off the rails, and then I think it's like 6 is like just almost unwatchable. Boggled my mind like how bad that they could get the masks. Like, wasn't expecting it to be like perfect Shatner mask, but like 4 and 5, like the way they just completely screw the pooch on the mask. It's just kind of like you almost actively have to try to make it. Yeah, I feel bad saying that now because I'm sure someone worked very hard on this.
Maybe
aren't the Halloween sequels sort of like they're sort of like the leader in the clubhouse of all of the 80s slasher franchises that really just were the worst. It almost feels like Freddy and Jason, they went as deep as the Halloween movies, but like they were still trying to make something entertaining. Like the Halloween movies were just like, fuck this, like just let's grab some cash.
Yeah.
We don't need a script. We don't need a mask.
I have guilty, like once you get to H2O and then the Busta Rhymes one, I forget what it's called, but like those are guilty
Resurrection.
pleasures. Yeah, those are guilty pleasures of mine. Not the best movies. H2O is okay. There's something about those movies though where they just start owning it again. It's like,
but I think like to what Alan was saying, where I think like the producers behind Freddy realized that they could kind of lean into like the cartooniness of it all, and they could kind of get outlandish, almost like Looney Tunes, and they kind of did. Compared to Jason, I think, was it in final chapter where they brought back Tom Savini and they kind of made Jason look pretty badass. I think it was in parts 4 where they tried to kind of like bringing in like the psychic kids and like they were traumatized and kind of setting up like maybe there will be another Michael. And then there was like the paramedic, spoiler alert, that actually like was dressed up as like as Jason trying to do this stuff. Like at some point, like I think they just gave up and said, screw it, let's just put him on a boat and take him to Manhattan and let him just like uppercut someone's head off. Like that's what the kids really want to watch.
Let's spoil the fun part.
Pete said before, like he barely makes it to Manhattan, like
except for that one great shot where the camera like twirls around him when I think it's Kane Hodder who is under the mask, right? And he's in Times Square. Just a cool shot.
This is the one day they got to actually film in Manhattan because I think that sopped up like 70% of their budget
just to get that permit to shoot in Times Square. Yeah,
New York City's not cheap to shoot in. Like
that's right.
It would have been funny if they had just gone like the guerrilla shoot route where like they just like run into Times Square with a camera and Kane Hodder all dressed up, and then you get like actual reactions from people as opposed to like setting something up like that. I would have like, give me 20 minutes of that and I'll take that over the rest of the movie.
I'll say, Alan, if you don't mind, would you mind kind of wrapping it up and we can go over the whole schedule, let people know, kind of give us a good wrap up for folks that are listening?
Sure. So Stranger Friends are back starting October 6th, this Friday coming up. We're back with Chopping Mall and Troll 2, and we're really looking forward to having a Stranger Friends reunion during the month of spooky season, Halloween, movies galore, horror movies, stuff you can rip on, stuff you can rag on, stuff you can laugh at with your Stranger Friends. So on October 13th, we'll be watching Jason Takes Manhattan and Witchboard. On October 20th, we'll be watching Sleepaway Camp and Slumber Party. And then we'll be finalizing it close to Halloween on October 27th with Halloween 4 and Hell Night. And it's going to be one hell of a ride. So we really hope you guys join us. It's going to be on Twitter X, hashtag Stranger Friends. It's also going to be on the Stranger Friends Discord channel.
What time will the movies be, Mr. Allen?
They will be at 8 o'clock, 7 Central. And the double feature will start at roughly 10 p.m., depending on the streaming platform. Let's keep in mind that if we go through the free services like Tubi or Freevee or Pluto, that an hour and a half long movie can turn into 3.5 days. So we will stay with you, though. All of your Stranger Friends, Pete, Rebecca, Brooke, Johnny Z, Bernie G, we're all going to be there for the long haul. If it takes until 3 o'clock in the morning, we will watch these movies and we will rip them and we will just laugh our asses off and have a blast.
But I should also say Stranger Friends has a Twitter account now as well. And so we definitely encourage people to follow us along there because that's where you can get all of your centralized info if you're at all interested in joining us. And that is at SF Movie Group on the X, on the Twitter. Please give us a follow and we will love to follow you back.
For those people who do not use Twitter, X, like John and myself, we're going to be really sticking to the Discord part of that. For those people who are looking for the information as well, there is an Instagram and a Facebook page, also SF Movie Group for the handle, so you can find us there. And the information of all our movies will be posted there for this month of October, and then whatever we do in the future, we'll keep posting beyond that for anything that we do, so people can join.